professor here at Columbia, the Slavic department, and the director of the Harriman Institute. And in that role, I have the honor of welcoming you all to a very special event tonight, a highly emotional and important one. We've chosen as the title, Kidnapped Childhood, Russia's War on Ukraine's Children. As the title suggests, we are going to talk about difficult things, focusing on the unlawful deportation and transfer of Ukrainian children to Russia in the context of what the Kremlin calls special military operation in Ukraine. According to Ukrainian authorities, nearly 20,000 children have been taken from Ukraine to Russia over the past 2 years. Those are only the documented cases. The actual number is not known at the moment, although the authorities suspect that it might be at least 10 times higher, which brings it closer to 250,000 children. Russian officials give an even higher estimate. Maria Lvova-Belova, Russia's Commissioner for Children's Rights in the Office of the President of the Russian Federation, openly boasted last year that more than 700,000 Ukrainian children are now in Russia. She, of course, portrays that as a humanitarian effort, although international institutions don't seem to take her word for it. As you know, in March last year, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for both Lvova-Belova and Putin himself, precisely on the charge of unlawful transportation of Ukraine's children. To provide a context and commentary for this particularly painful chapter of the current war in Ukraine, we have invited 4 distinguished guests who bring to the conversation a variety of experiences and expertise. We are proud to bring to Columbia Mykola Kuleba, a Ukrainian social and political activist and former presidential commissioner for children's rights. With over 25 years of experience advocating for children's rights, he is globally recognized as a child protection expert and has received several highly visible international awards, including the Oxy Courage Award and the Mykola Prize Award last year. In 2014, Mr. Kuleba founded the charitable organization Save Ukraine, which is the key Ukrainian organization that provides rescue missions for forcibly deported children. To date, Save Ukraine has successfully repatriated more than 130 children abducted during the current war in Ukraine. Mr. Kuleba is joined by Ukrainian filmmaker Tetiana Khodakivska, who initiated last year an international project, The Blue Sweater with a Yellow Hole. This project is aimed to amplify the voices of repatriated Ukrainian children in a combination of art, documentary efforts, and legal expertise. Tetiana recruited for the project Ukrainian artists to conduct drawing interviews with the children. One of them was the renowned Ukrainian conceptual artist, Alevtina Kakhidze, who is with us tonight straight from Kiev to share her experiences from these sessions and the art generated in them. Some of the art is here on display being publicly shown for the first time. Last but not least, We welcome Volodymyr Venher, who is joining us on Zoom from Kiev, despite the very late hour there. Good evening, Volodymyr. Professor Venher teaches in the Department of General Theoretical Jurisprudence and Public Law at the National University of Kiev-Mohyla Academy, and is the executive director there of the Rule of Law Center. One of the leading Ukrainian constitutional scholars today, he has focused much of his recent work on the forcible transfer and Russification of Ukrainian children, and he will share with us his legal expertise tonight. Before we begin our conversation, I would like to take a few minutes to thank institutions and people who have made this event possible. We are profoundly grateful to the journalism school, which kindly offered to host us in this premier space on campus. The Institute for Global Politics at the School of International Public Policy for their generous contribution to this event. Global Columbia and its leader, Vice President Rafael Sadr, who cannot be here with us tonight, unfortunately, but she sends all her best all the way from Antarctica. And the Saltzman Institute for War and Peace, which also co-sponsors the event. To all of these fellow institutions at Columbia, we owe our sincere gratitude. I would also like to acknowledge our partner organization, Razum for Ukraine, and personally its CEO, Dora Homyak, for helping us with the conceptualization and the publicizing of the event. Finally, I thank profusely my exceptional team at the Harriman Institute, and mostly Eileen Hun, Marko Andrejczyk, and Alex Turek, who have put numerous hours of hard work to make sure everything goes smoothly tonight. Thank you. And now, I have the pleasure of announcing a surprise for you. We have surprise guests straight from Ukraine. 5 of the children repatriated successfully who are in the United States traveling with Save Ukraine. And so can you please, 5 of you, join us, come here so that our audience can greet you. Ksenia, who's 19, will briefly address you on behalf of the children and share with you her story. So, Ksenia.
Hello, my name is Ksenia. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Ukraine. I have a younger brother, 12 years old, Sergei, and we are the children without parents. And when after the Russians invaded, my brother and I were sent to Russia. I ended up in a technical school and my brother was taken to a summer camp. 2 weeks turned into 9 months of separation. I started looking for ways to return. I promised myself that I would not live without my brother. The Russians put pressure on Sergei, convincing him that no one needed him, that he would not return to Ukraine because there was a war and Nazis there. I was told that he doesn't not go with me and me prefers to stay in Russia. After such words, I gathered my view into a first. I managed to speak with him and eventually he agrees to come with me. After several days of exhausting travel, constant interrogation and fear that we will not be allowed to Ukraine and will be forced to live in Russia, we reached Ukraine. But despite all horrors and traumas, I believe in the victory of Ukraine. I believe that all children will return to their families and that Russia must be punished for its crimes, so that this country must be punished for its crimes and will no longer be able to steal Ukrainian children and turn them into Russians. I'm sorry. I'm the voice of orphans children who were kidnapped and forced to live under the rule of the Russians. Each of us different story, but we are united by the fact that we kidnapped by Russia. Thank you. I can introduce also these guys. This is Diana, 5 years old, and she is from Kherson. This is Rostik. She also from Kherson. He 18 years old. This is Lisa, 17 years old, also from Kherson, and also Denise from Kherson. She also 18. And we were kidnapped by Russia.
Thank you so much. And we are very, very grateful that you could be here with us tonight. Thank you. So now we can turn to our conversation and the complicated stories that we would like to unpack for you tonight. None of them would have been possible without one organization and the person behind it, Mykola Kuleba. And so we will begin the conversation with him. Please tell us, as a warm-up for our discussion, a few words about your organization and the invaluable work you do.
Thank you so much to Columbia University and the Harriman Institute for hosting this evening events. As we gather here in vibrant halls of this esteemed institution, we carry an urgent plea for the more than 19,000 kidnapped children that need be brought back and reintegrated into society after the traumatic experience in Russia. My organization, Save Ukraine, which I found after first invasion 2014, rescuing and helping rehabilitate and reintegrate more than 240 kidnapped children from their families, and they've been kidnapped from the orphanages and their country as part of Russia's cynical attempt to change facts on the ground. And we are providing different kind of support, family and childcare services for these kids, administrating an emergency hotline for immediate assistance, then documenting the war crimes for International Criminal Court in The Hague. Then we providing children with and their families in our hope and healing centers with the 6 months rehabilitation program that includes psychological, social, and humanitarian support, including housing and food. And we running education and empowerment community centers for the children and their families in local communities. We have 7 hope and healing centers and 15 community centers. It's our holistic approach of returning, recovering, and reintegrating children who've been kidnapped and who receive horrible traumas. And, you know, I just heard Ksenia's speech in English. It's amazing because when we, yeah, Ksenia, it's amazing. She's say no. Yeah, because it's one of the first speeches of her in English. Yeah, and when yeah, thank you. And Ksenia is the voice of all orphan children. She's an orphan, and her brother, they've been divided, and she now studying in university from from September last year as a journalist. And she told me that I want be that child, she's a young adult, who raised a voice for all innocent kids, especially for orphans who've been kidnapped. And it is one of her speeches in English. I love this, Ksenia. You're amazing. Thank you. And they are really brave. We spent last week in Washington, D.C. We've been on congressional hearings. We had meetings with decision makers, with concerned Americans who trying to find any possible ways how to help to save Ukrainian children, to return kidnapped, and who praying and standing with us. And before we will speak about this deportation or kidnapping, I want to say thank you so much for standing with us, for supporting us. I am so grateful all American nation being with us. You are our strong support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mykola. I have one specific question for you. You told me in a previous conversation that only about 5% of what Save Ukraine does focuses on the rescue of children. And yet, this is perhaps the most visible part of your activities, and quite probably the riskiest, the trickiest of it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I told you that rescuing kidnapped children, it was not our priority when full-scale invasion started, because we recognized this after we liberated some areas in Kherson and Kharkiv region, but from the first day of war, we were evacuating from combat zones children and families, and Save Ukraine evacuated more than 100,000 children and women from combat zones. But after we recognized that many kids disappeared from occupied territories, we started our rescue missions, and it was first 8, then 10 kids. The biggest our rescue mission was when we brought back more than 20 kids. It was the biggest. But after Putin and Maria Lvova received this warrant order, everything stopped. Russia blocking any rescue. That's why we are rescuing one by one now. And every return of one child, it's a special mission, because many relatives or parents or official representatives who went to Russia, it's a long way through Poland, Belarus, or in other countries to Russia or occupied territories or Crimea, and they've been interrogated. Some of them, they've been lie detected, or the Russian FSB sent them go through lie detection or even DNA tests to prove that they are relatives. It is horrible that everything what Russia doing is a war crime. they committing genocide, brainwashing and weaponizing our children. And we have a proof from that kids who've been saved, who've been returned. This child is the evidence of war crimes. They've been brainwashed and they forced them to receive passports, Russian birth certificates, and we can tell you a lot of stories about what they experience in Russia.
Yeah, we will talk about the experience of what actually happens in Russia once the children are abducted. But before that, I would like to ask Volodymyr, can you hear me? Is he on?
Yeah.
So what can you lead us, help us understand why is it so difficult, both legally and in practical terms, to repatriate children once they are in Russia?
I hope you can hear me and you can see me.
Yes, perfect.
Greetings from very late Kyiv. And first of all, thank you so much for the invitation and for this huge support, not only for Ukrainian children, but for Ukraine in general. And it's really important to talk about these issues from very different angles. Looking about legal perspective, all legal regulations are more concentrated on national level, and all legal rules and procedures are based on national sovereignty. That is why when we talk about any reasonable actions in international level, it's based on cooperation, on mutual recognition, on support, and efficient collaboration between different governments. Talking about forcible and other, not only forcible movement of children, but also other war crimes and occupation of the territory. It's like tabula rasa from international law perspective, and it's almost empty and dark room from national law perspective, because without effective control of the territories, without effective cooperation between governments, without sharing information, without supporting activities, it's impossible for any government to conduct proper both regulation and administrative procedures. Many international authorities, and of course Ukrainian government, prove that Ukraine doesn't have efficient and effective control of that territories, and cooperation with Russian authorities is extremely limited to very, very, very small number of cases to receive this support. And of course, Russian authorities, they do not recognize these activities as war crimes or even the efficient control and responsibility on occupied territories. That is why, from legal perspective, it's extremely hard to reach this goal and support these children and other people forced to come to Russia or deported to Russia. I hope I answered your question, and if I need to do some other clarification, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. This is very useful. So it is only possible for blood relatives to claim the children from the Russians, either a mother or a grandparent, and they have to undergo this impossible ordeal of entering the Russian territory and being continually interrogating to prove. But how do they identify where the children are?
Thank you. But before I answer, I want to invite Olga, who is with us and who is every day with these kids who help organize this rescue mission of Save Ukraine and who is working with these kids every day. And she will help me because I can forget something. Yeah. You know, many kids have been taken to the summer camps or taken by militaries to Russia or to orphanages. They've been taken, some of them taken with the relatives. Many disappeared in Russia. For example, that children whose parents were killed in Mariupol, it's thousands of parents were killed there and they disappeared. And we have hotline, and these kids who are with us, they can tell you stories how they found us. Sometimes they found us in social media, and one girl has seen another girl with the bags in the camp and asked her, "Where are you going?" She told, "Oh, my relatives came and I'm going home." But who helping you? She told, "Save Ukraine." And yeah, she found our phone number and she connected with her mother, and mother found us. Yeah, and it is a lot of stories. And many kids we found through another children who've been returned, and they told us where are that kids, and then we found their relatives, or we sent official representatives to take these kids back. But it is a long way. It's always very stressful for parents, and one grandmother whose child, she was a guardianship for a child. It was 12 years old girl. After 13 hours of interrogation, next day she died because her heart stopped, and that girl disappeared. We tried to connect with her. She has a brother, a little brother, and relatives, but Russian took her and placed to Russian families, and we're trying to find her for the last maybe 6 months, and she's disappeared. We can tell you a lot of stories. Maybe Olga will add something to better understand how it happened.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us today here. I just want to tell the conclusion that I want to tell that Russians commit a real genocide in occupied territories of Ukraine and in the matter of abduction of Ukrainian children. These kids, they should have normal life, normal childhood. Instead of all of that, they were deprived of their lives at their home, in their homeland. And when we see them, when they come back, they they don't want to talk at first. They don't want to talk, and they don't trust adults anymore, because those adults in Russia or Russian authority in occupied territories, they brainwashed them. They created an atmosphere of fear, of Russian propaganda, and the atmosphere when the child has no choice in any of his will. For instance, one girl, one 10 years girl who we returned, she told us that she was forced to go to Russian school. And her classmate, also a 10 years girl, she asked a simple question to a teacher. May I go to the toilet? And she said that in Ukrainian language, because she didn't know Russian. And this girl was taken by other teachers to some room for private conversation for several hours. And when she came back, she was crying. She sat silent, and she didn't talk to anybody in class anymore. No, that day. So we have a lot of work to do in future. And one more thing I want to tell, that we need strong support because time goes by and these kids keep living in this atmosphere under this Russian authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, can you help us understand, and maybe this is a question for both Mykola and Volodymyr, the pattern of targeting specific groups of children on the part of the Russian? Who are the kidnapped children? Is there any, can we tease out a particular strategy of selecting the most vulnerable children of all? And what is the methods of repatriating them?
Volodymyr, let me start. Thank you. It's a system. It's not method. It doesn't matter it's kidnapped child or child with a family. It's clear strategy of Russia. First of all, erase Ukrainian identity. All their system, kindergarten, schools, they are full of hate of Ukraine. They instill hatred towards Ukraine. They instill hatred towards United States. We learned this in Soviet Union. I grew up in Soviet Union. I know what it is. Nothing changed in Russia. They learn in special classes in their schools that Russia is a victim. That's why they are protecting their state in Ukraine, because they have to protect their country, and that's why they are fighting with NATO, with Nazi, with United States in Ukraine. And through horrible Russia propaganda, not only children, but adults, they believe that they are fighting against United States on Ukrainian land just to protect their country. And we are aggressors, United States and Ukraine, and they're victims, Russian victims. Yeah, and it's horrible lie. It's Russian propaganda.
But you're not answering my question. My question was, what specific groups of children are being targeted? In my understanding, one group are children of parents who go through filtration camps or filtration process. So these are Ukrainian families that are specifically labeled as enemies.
There are no groups.
So,
For example, these kids, they've been first, they send them to camps. For example, Rostik was taken from their home because his mother was sick and grandmother died after war started.
Mhm.
And she lived alone at home. And one day soldiers came, took him. They didn't ask him if he wanted or not. They took him first to a camp and then sent to a military academy. And he's been there. And many families have been forced and divided. Parents were placed to special filtration camps, and children were sent to the orphanages or to another facilities. Its whole system works for all population, because on occupied territories, many families were threatened if they will not send their children to the camps, these kids will be taken from them. Yeah, it's very important for Russian just to be sure that everybody obey Russia, everybody, all families, all children. And we, maybe Olga will tell you a story about telephone, that when Russian soldiers found just pictures in one boy's phone what they did with the child.
I wanna, yes, thank you, Mykola. I wanna add about Diana and Dennis. Your question was about specific groups. No matter what family you are from, because, for instance, Diana is from ordinary Ukrainian family with 4 children, with a mother and a father. Many families first don't want to leave their homes, so they stayed, and they forced to live under Russian occupation. Or Dennis, he has parents, but his parents can't hear and can't speak. So Russian military just went in his home and took him, and his parents, they just couldn't do anything against
Yeah, they couldn't
people
protect.
with weapon. And the story Mykola mentioned, it's about 2 boys, 2 teenagers who lived in occupied territory. Russian military just found some number, some pictures on their phones, the number of his friend. And they took both of these teens into some basement in some building, and they were torturing them and beating them all night. And when parents found out about that fact that their children were taken, they came to this building, and they were not allowed to come in. So the parents just were standing there and listening how their children were screaming all night. And all of this was because of pro-Ukrainian position of those boys. Then in the morning, Russian military just said that these boys must leave this territory, must leave their home, their town, but parents were not allowed to leave. So this is what they do.
So in order to understand a little bit more closely, perhaps, I will turn to Tetiana and ask her to tell us a little bit more about her project. I will start with a story. So Tanya approached me earlier last year in the spring with this still rough idea about the project and with a lot of enthusiasm. And I immediately grasped that she's up to something important and there's an urgency to act. So when she asked me whether Harriman is willing to be a research partner to her project, I said, of course. And so in the summer, you went to Ukraine and began the project in earnest, but can you tell me what was the aha moment, the spark that triggered this process for you?
Yeah, of course. I just wanted also to answer your previous question that what children? It's just all children that they can get.
Any
It's
child.
any child. So they're just looking for any possibility to, like, parents, no parents, just anybody that they can get in any possible ways, like it was described before. So about spark, it was not actually spark, it was my own fear. And it started in 2014 when I was editing and co-directing film about Crimea, occupation of Crimea. And I was watching a lot of propaganda for that film. So like day after day, hours of propaganda. And first I was laughing because it was, like about oranges filled with drugs that Ukrainian eat. That's why we are so weird. And it's really, it was funny. Like on the main Russian channel about like maybe a lot of you, this video about stage video with actors that Ukrainian crucifying a child. You remember this one. So it's also it's so absurd that you cannot believe it. But then like after 2 weeks, I started to realize that my mind is betraying me because my mind is trying to find something that I can't believe. So I couldn't be involved. So it's trying to find something small, like, okay, this all is unbelievable, but probably this one is real. And like 3 weeks, I couldn't trust myself anymore. So from that moment, from 2014, I was thinking how to address this, how to address it. We all can be victims of indoctrination and propaganda and manipulation with information, and we need to do it. And that's why I approach you, because we have to do it together with educational institution, and that's why I approach Alevtina, because we all have to do it together also with art. And like this, like investigation, bringing children back, educational institution, art, maybe together we will understand what can we do with it. Because like, what? And then after the war, the foreign war started, I started to reading about these children and about Safe Ukraine that brings them back. And you know, like at that moment, I was here and nobody will believe it. Not like, and everybody will say like, oh, 3,100 children, Ukraine says it's smaller, 20,000, we don't know what to believe. Like it cannot be true that so many children were kidnapped. So like after my university did some research, like people started to believe. So again, I understood that we have to work together. Like we can document together with Safe Ukraine what is happening, and then an academical institution can do their own research on manipulation and propaganda. And maybe before we continue, we can see this video from our first expedition, and just to explain you how it's all connected with these artworks, like what we did. We first we partners with organizations that protects children and rights of children. And through all the trainings, how to work with children, and then we went to Kherson and Kharkiv, very close to the front line, to do this art session together with Ukrainian contemporary artists and children. And each region is working with the artists from that region. And let's probably watch it, and then we can continue.
But the Kherson explosion sometimes.
Так, отут вулиця, так іде. Все згори. Отут так будинок.
Скільки вікон?
4. До озера. Найближче.
Слава Україні! Дивіться, щось горить. Он бачите. В селі там засело.
Меня зовут Таисия, мне 15 лет, я с города Херсон.
Меня зовут Кира, мне 10,5.
Я Кирилл, мне 12 лет, я с Херсона.
Меня зовут Никита.
Данил.
Катя.
Меня зовут Артем.
Тетяна, я из Херсона.
Меня зовут Дима.
Мене звати Віталій.
Аня, Маргарита, Вика. Я с Херсона.
Херсонська область, город Береслав.
Ну, если бы я не співала би російський гімн, то мене би наругали.
А якою мовою там з вами говорили?
На російській.
А ви якою?
Ну, я спочатку не розуміла. Мене ругали, коли я на українській була. Мене потім ругали.
Вони бачились півроку. Важко.
Не плач. А скільки всього на території лагеря людей?
До 2000.
Ого.
Камеры были вот тут, вот тут, вот тут. Ну и в самих корпусах.
Даже он ее бил за то, что у него был символика украинская.
Це розказував хлопчик?
Я бачу. Там була дверь для ізолірованих дітей.
І вас там закрили на скільки?
На 10 дней.
Ну, надо хорошо слушаться, щоб не закрили.
Для нас эти лагеря тюрьмой были. Настоящие.
So, thank you. And why is it important? First of all, we work together with children. So we collaborate them and we create this art that you can see here together. And in this art, you can see confirmation of what Mykola and Olga was saying. What they have mentioned, for example, when other people came to the houses and said that, oh, we're taking your child to camp, or if not, we will just take it away. Like we will get your parental rights away. This is all there. You can see it, and you can see like that. Every of this, for example, artist has isolation room where his children were locked from 2 days for 10 days. So it's basically closed room with the closed door, without telephone, anybody, one child that cannot leave for 10 days, as a prison, basically, as these children were saying. But what is important that they were all under heavy pressure of propaganda there. And they probably not always was able to understand it till later. And I'm sure like Volodymyr can talk more about this Russification, like heavy Russification that they are going there. And what is also important that it's not stays in the camp. It also this propaganda also comes here and to press here. And we have to be very careful with this. For example, yesterday, this information that I read about Mariupol. So the child broke table, and then the teacher asked them to write apology about this. So we understand that we are not grateful enough. Can you just imagine that they took everything from these children? Their parents, their city, their houses, and now they have to apologize for the table. So this is exactly what's happening when Russia is saying we're saving these children. So they cannot save children with one parent and then burn them with another, kill them with another. So now they are killing children, and who save children is save Ukraine. Bring these children back. So we have to clearly understand the causal network when we talk about this, because it's recognition. It's not sometimes looks logical, but it's actually not. So just let's be careful with that. That it's not that propaganda just stays in these camps. It's grow all over.
Thank you, Tanya. I understand that this is a very emotional, loaded topic, and emotions run high, so it is very difficult to talk about it, especially analytically. But can you describe the methods that you applied? You didn't approach the kids with a clear method in your head, but the methods appeared in the process of the work. So can you lead us through this process?
Yeah. We were thinking from the beginning that we need to protect children. That was the first idea, and that's why we partnered with Terdezom, this organizations that know how to protect children. So first, our idea was that probably some children don't want that we see their faces, right? So we were thinking, okay, maybe we can use animation and we can have someone drawing their stories while we have this interview. Then when we came there, we start talking with Alevtina, and we decide that it's not really comfortable for child, just like he's like giving an interview and there is some person in the room that drawing, he doesn't know what this person draw, so it's not very respectful. So we decide, why don't we try to do everything together, to collaborate, and just so not we kind of guide children, but we follow them. You know, we just ask them, how do you want to do it? Where do you want paper? Do you want this paper on the table or on the wall? And so we are one team. And then we discover that actually children can remember much more. Because sometimes I would say we actually forgot about this. This is first time when we like kind of remember about that. So this is how process appeared, basically. What was the process? And we always think how to protect children.
It's the most creative and innovative part of the project is the use of art and artists. So from Alevtina's perspective as an artist, how do you connect with the children and how do they respond to you? And what emerges in this creative collaborative process between you and them?
Yeah, hi everyone. Actually, the secret is that all kids actually do like artists. Just because they are almost like they still draw, because most of adults stop drawing, and then suddenly some adults do draw. And of course, it was for each child to find themselves in the art studio, real art studio. So actually, I'm actually representing the team of professional artists, as Tanya already mentioned. And of course, the kid came and look on the walls, look on the lot of supplies, a lot of pencil, brushes, and also another secret. We suggested not that A4 paper, which is, you know, you all have as adults, but just big paper, really big paper, and a roll of paper just on the whole wall. And actually, the story was that let's start where the story began. And they start to draw, and I would say that it was different with kids. Sometimes artists and a child did draw, sometimes only child did that. It was actually, you said that I'm conceptual artist, and it's not just drawing, it's also text. So it's graphic novels. And what is happening from the perspective of conceptual art? It's actually a privilege for an artist to draw many experiences. Sometimes when it's very joyful or happiness, sometimes when it's really like very sad and dramatic. If you draw, it gives you power because you become a person who draw your own story and you're already subjective. And it means you draw yourself. And it's your way how you can draw yourself, big or small, how it looks like. You can draw the people you didn't like in past, smaller, ugly, you know. But it's interesting, again, that we worried with Tetiana, if kids start to lie to us. It's also possible. Even adults do lie, isn't it? But when somebody draws, you can't lie because you need details. So I would say that people do lie better or more successful in words than in drawings. You need to be really, really very much imaginary mind in order to produce details in drawings. And it's really worked because it's also one thing done to belong. So like they started from the beginning, and then of course it was so easy. So they were taken, they were brought to this place, then another place. Here there was the school where they studied, then another school. How many kids were in the room, how many beds. you know, it helped to have this kind of distance and have an overview. And then, of course, they got this power to stand and look at the 1 year story, even 1 year and a half story. And of course, in the end of the session, we worried that it would be very exhausted for them, but it was absolutely fine. And we did laugh. And it not only very sad story, it also so much about resilience. And of course, they told us secrets. And sometimes they did draw something, didn't say anything, didn't comment. So it was magic.
So you actually gave them agency, you gave them a voice, visual voice, in order to tell their own story, and that's empowerment. And I'm sure they felt that.
Many of them still draw. Maybe like they still send in to us some drawing, and it helps to them because some of them live now in very like dangerous places of Kherson region, and it helps them. They just draw like the building that was ruined yesterday next to them. So of course it's helping.
So you
but
also
also
gave them
about
tools of therapy as the trauma continues to happen in their lives, which is amazing.
Of course, yeah. And then I think that it's also helps to see patterns, because this question about lying, it was not that like I was not worried that they were lying, because for me it's not important. Like I'm not investigating journalist, you know, like we just documenting them. But first of all, if they want to protect their dignity and say something, it's their right. We just need to respect them and give them voice, like whatever they want to say. But when we have this like documentation, and that's why this archive important, because the other part is that we are creating this transcribed archive for research after that Harriman will do, like on manipulation. Then you can see patterns. Then you can see, you cannot say that this is a lie if like 20 children mention the isolation room. So it's a proof that it's actually happened. They all said that they could not speak Ukrainian language or they will be punished. Or like psychiatric clinics. This is like 30 days in psychiatric clinics, and then like they use it also to scare other children, to say that if you will not obey, you will also go in psychiatric clinic. So you see this confirmation on different drawing and different stories. And I'm sure Olga and Mykola can say more about this.
I just wanna tell you about resilience. Here's the boy, Rostislav. He was 17 when he was taken. Mykola mentioned about when his grandma died and his mother was taken to the hospital. But about resilience, he was in isolatory confinement for 4 times for 15 days, just for refusal to sing Russian anthem. She didn't want to do it. Like, never.
Yeah. And one more pattern that how they also manipulate with children, that if you don't want to sing, you need to write the explanation note. So you go in a special small room and you write in, I didn't sing this because, and then you have to explain because. Then they have this a bit older children, they're like vajati, I don't know how you translate this. So if this older mentor, team leaders, yeah. So if the leader has 5 of these papers, they expel him. And then this team leader will say to the child or young adult, you broke my life. So this is all the scheme, and as Mykola said, this is a system of manipulation that you get into, and you really need to be resilient to do that, like for 15 days to stay after in the isolation room.
Do children change their story? I mean, are they reluctant in the beginning to talk about the experience? Does the story get more detailed the longer they stay away from Russia? Does the story begin to fill in with details later? Do they change what they say? What is your experience, both of Save Ukraine and of the
You know,
project?
as Olga told us that after they've been returned, many kids don't want, they're speechless. They don't want to tell their stories, what happened. They're really afraid because they've been threatened. And they believe that Nazi will kill them. That's why they're afraid. They don't want. And then in our centers, we provide support. And the biggest support is love and care. And every day we can see how they changed. Then we can, and psychologists working with them, and they can tell them stories, what happened. And it's just one of our kid. I heard this first time that when they've been taken to a camp, Russians to take all phones and to зашторили вікна в автобусах. It's
Shaded the windows in the bus.
in the bus, and it was like, you know, like enemies was in a cage, and they didn't tell you, they didn't feed them, and they've been threatened. They're kids, and then when we returned them, we could only know in every child who been returned, we know more and more. It's new stories. You can find maybe 30 stories of our kids in New York Times. They've been working 6 months to speak with these kids, just to tell these stories. Yeah, they are unique stories, but it's many more. You know, it's like apparently I should shout now. I should screaming now what I learn, what I'm learning every day from that kids whom we returning, and it happened in my heart, really. We are overwhelmed of feelings, and we understand that it is enemy who just want to kill our kids, erase their identity. And our role as Save Ukraine just to save one more child, 10 children. Yeah, and it is our role. If we can do this, we will do this, and we are doing when it's possible. But we understand that how many of them have been brainwashed. Really, it's so hard when we speak with these kids, when we connect with them, found them, and they tell, no, it's better, maybe I'll stay here. Why? Oh, because it's a war. And many kids who've been returned told us that they did not know that Ukraine exists anymore. Really, they learned that Ukraine invaded, and they learned that they could be killed, or very soon Russia will invade all country. It's a lot of stories, a lot of stories.
So there is a lot of emotional information that you receive from the kids when they first come back to Ukraine, and then their narratives emerge, either with words or with images. And Tanya started talking about patterns of what we learn about what actually happens in Russia with the abducted children. This is very important because we hear tons of different narratives that are spun from the Russian Federation about the humanitarian efforts, about the saving of the Ukrainian children, about the wonderful conditions in which they live in Russia, about the willingness of Russian families to take them in and adopt them and care for them. one of the patterns that I hear emerge from the stories of the children themselves is this process of indoctrination, which aims at erasing completely their Ukrainian identity, their language, their history, their culture, and systemic crucifixion of these very vulnerable, young, malleable individuals. Another there are different tactics also that emerge, some kind of reward and punishment economy, bribes and lies, and lucrative promises, and then punishment.
And education also.
The brainwashing, which goes the propaganda, the feeding with narratives, but also under it, bribes and threats and real punishment. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can give few examples of what Mykola actually was talking. So first of all, this about that they didn't know that Ukraine exists. So what they do, they change books in the schools. So when they occupy territory, they come with their own storybooks. And then I saw the storybooks. There is no mention of Ukraine there. So Ukraine just erased from these books. So this is school, and this is like you go to school and you're starting to learn something new, and you believe probably in it. Like I said, first you don't believe, but then there today, if it's like year, now some children 2 years. So of course you start to believe. And then another example that Mykola said about threatening, for example, they kind of, I don't know, they turn upside down the reality. So they don't allow them to speak Ukrainian language, but you can see in one of these paintings, they say that you can speak Russian in your country, in Ukraine, they will kill you. So they just tell the story absolutely like to some absurd, but these children believe in it sometimes. Like the girl that was one of the drawing, she was saying that they told me that they ate all books in her son. So I called at someone finally, and I could call to my grandmother. I asked her, did they eat like all books eaten? Or is eaten? And she was completely serious. And then she said to me, like, after, and this is about your question, do they change the story? She said that then I was sitting and I couldn't believe that I believed in that lie. But when I ran a different reality, she was in Russia, and all people, all adults, said to you that they ate a book. Of course, at some moment you will start to believe. So it's a lot of lies, but also system of education created to erase Ukraine.
Let me add something. Very often journalists asking me why Putin needs children. Why? It's only 3 very simple reasons. First, to destroy, to erase nationality. Erase, because he hates Ukraine. He wants like to return Russian Empire, Soviet Union. He needs Ukraine, but not as a state, but like a region, territory. And it's very important for him to annihilate identity. That's why it's huge propaganda. That's why all subject in their schools, it's full of hate, and they totally change history, and they have to convince children that you are Russian children. They must turn them to Russian children. Number 2, a huge demographic problem. Russia is 13 times bigger as a territory than Ukraine, and only 3 times more population. They have big territories with no man, with nobody. That's why they sending these families, children, to Eastern Russia, where a lot of abandoned territories and houses, and they can easily give them these abandoned houses to live in a village and to increase their population. And number three, to instill hatred towards Ukraine, towards US, Europe, and weaponize these children. It is very cynical, but they are doing this, cynically doing this. They weaponize these kids. Thousands young adults who are fighting on battlefields from Russian side as Russian soldiers, it was Ukrainian school children. If you ask them why they are fighting with Ukraine, they told, no, we are fighting with Nazi, with NATO, with Americans. We have to protect our land. They learn this. Three main things: demographical, to annihilate identity and weaponize these kids against Ukraine.
Yeah, I will add to the demographic problem that it's not only that there is sparse population, but the segment of Russians in the Russian Federation is diminishing. So producing more Russians through this Russification of Ukrainian children.
And you know, one more thing, you have to remember one thing. What we found, what we received from Soviet Union being there. One main thing, children are not valued in Soviet Union, in Russia Empire, are not valued. It's our huge problem in Ukraine now, after we've been in Soviet bloc, in Soviet Union, that people not valued and children not valued. It's just population. That's why Putin can send thousands, hundreds of thousands soldiers, people just to die, because they are not valued.
If I may add also, I was thinking, reading about all of these, that it is also collective punishment to Ukraine. And it's a tactic that Stalin used back in the day. Collective punishment that targets the family and the kin, so that the entire cell of the society is destroyed. Relationships between parents and children are severed, and in this way, the kin is deprived of a future, which on a collective level leads to no future for the entire nation. But this targeting of the kin, of the family, is an old Stalinist technique, which is now reused in the new war. Volodymyr, are you still there?
Yes, I do.
I wanted to ask you a very important for me question. So patterns emerge from what Save Ukraine tells us and what Tanya's project has teased out of the stories the children tell and draw. Are their findings, are the patterns that they have identified correspond to the big aggregated data that lawyers are working with? Does this ring true to what you know from a much bigger corpus of data?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, we have a lot of evidence which would support these facts and these ideas presented here. We have some obstacles to prove that in International Criminal Court and other authorities, because very often all that data is from private persons collected by NGOs, but not by law enforcement authorities. And the key problem here is lack of opportunity for Ukrainian authorities to get there, to have first-hand information collected according to, for example, criminal procedure and other things. But anyway, all these data, all these statistics which Ukrainian government has, improve a few very, very important legal things. And I want just to present very simple facts for you just to assess. So first one, we are talking about forcible transfer. What does it mean from a legal perspective? Does it mean just taking kids in a bus and taking them somewhere, asking them or not asking them? So from a legal point of view, forcible transfer should have a little bit broader meaning, which means not only like trafficking or doing something like that. Forcibly covers the threat of force of coercion, which may be caused by the fear of violence, duress, detention, psychological oppression or abuse of power against such person or persons or another person, or by taking advantage of a coercive environment. So we should have a little bit broader perspective in this way, and we should see that even if Russian authorities trying to present that it's children's will to go to Russia, we should take into account this mental environment and some mental pressure sometimes. Another very important fact to take into account from legal point of view, it's not only Ukrainian words. Russia itself said that they had transferred hundreds of thousands Ukrainian children. So they do recognize all these crimes with a little bit different motivation, but they do recognize this forcible transferring of Ukrainian children. And Russian officials have openly expressed their intent to have the transferred Ukrainian children educated in the Russian language, adopted in Russian families, and turned into Russian citizens. Moreover, there was a draft law introduced to Russian parliament which provides for a simplified procedure for adoption of forcibly displaced Ukrainian children by Russian families. And talking about this transferring, it's not only from fully occupied territories. Very often it's from newly occupied territories, and they are trying to give birth certificates, sometimes second time, for those children, just to present them as Russian citizens. And just to present this another very broad meaning of forcible transferring, we also should take into account that Russians, they are trying to sometimes transfer without transferring. They're not just putting children in educational camps. They are trying, as colleagues said, to create this educational environment in newly occupied territories. Very often in Ukraine, we have facts that directly after occupation, Russian troops, they are going not to some military bases to occupy, but to libraries and to schools to burn up Ukrainian books. And they have a lists of Ukrainian teachers to go to their homes and to make a pressure on them to convert to Russian educational curricula, Russian language curricula, and present history books and other books in Russian language. So it's wider perspective, and very often they try to force on the children even without transferring them physically, which means that all these Russian officials' actions, they indicate intent to separate Ukrainian children permanently from their national and cultural environment, of course, sometimes from their families and from their ethnic groups, which means thereby annihilate the Ukrainian identity and to stop their belonging to the national group. So right now, we already received almost 1 year ago, on March 17th, 2023, a decision from International Criminal Court, which issued a warrant of arrest for 2 individuals in the context of the situation in Ukraine, President Putin and Maria Alexeyevna Belova. Why International Criminal Court? And we should also take into account this important thing and differentiate International Criminal Court from other authorities, for example, International Court of Justice, which is UN authority. The second one is authority to find a solution for a dispute between countries, between independent states. And International Criminal Court, it's aimed to punish political leaders and national leaders and for war crimes and other very, very serious offenses. So this document for Putin, it's very, very important from legal point of view, because Putin became the first head of state of a UN Security Council permanent member to be the subject of the International Criminal Court arrest warrant. And this is very, very serious legal assessment for these activities. And just to finalize this legal perspective, I just want to say that all activities related to children, any kind of transfer and assimilation of children into a new group, new national group, can result in the erasure of their identity as members of the group, which means elements of the crime of genocide. And crime of genocide on international criminal law is crime of the crimes. It's top-level crime, which is extremely important to highlight here for this audience and for other people, because it's not just about children's fates. It's not about purely Ukrainian territories. It's about more general perspective. And as colleague said, according to Russian media, they are not fighting against Ukraine. They are fighting against collective West. So these attempts is not only about Ukrainian identity, it's about a little bit wider perspective. So sorry for talking too long, but from my perspective, it was very important to highlight these legal points. And if you have any question, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was very helpful. Thank you. And I just want to follow up with a specific question. What legal measures is Ukraine taking to counter these war crimes? I think somebody told me that you are involved in writing an amendment to the Ukrainian constitution. Is that true?
Thank you so much for this question. According to international criminal law, involvement of any international authorities could be well grounded in 2 cases. First one, if national authorities don't want to punish war crimes. And second one, when national authorities they don't have proper capacity to punish. So in Ukrainian case, we do want to punish Putin and other criminals, but we don't have capacity. And that is why Ukraine is applying to International Criminal Court, and in close cooperation with that international authority, Ukrainian General Prosecutor's Office, they are collecting proper data in a proper way. They are collecting evidence. They are trying to collect all proper documents to apply to the court and to have a final decision to punish those people. One of the elements, maybe not legal, but political, to start that activities was Act of the Parliament of Ukraine, Act of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine from April 14th, 2022, on an act of genocide committed by Russians in Ukraine. And me personally, and really big range of experts, professionals from Kyiv-Mohyla Law School and other law schools, we drafted this act of the parliament. And of course, we understand that it was more political action, but it helped to convince and help to start these processes on legal level too. And Ukrainian authorities, even having lack of access to those territories, to evidence, to children, of course, they're trying to do everything they can with very, very limited resources because of ongoing war.
Thank you. I want to ask a question to everybody. So, protecting children is a very powerful, the claim of protecting children and saving children is a very powerful political instrument, very effective. And Russia has been using it to their advantage. I want to ask you how you see the role of different Ukrainian institutions, governmental, legal, NGOs, art collectives in utilizing this element in Ukraine's struggle for survival right now. And then as a follow-up question, I want to pick your brain. How do you see the importance of what you're doing beyond Ukraine? Is there any larger implication of the lessons you have learned from the children, from your work, from the legal work that you do? So let's have, I'm not addressing this to anyone in particular, but feel free to talk to one another also.
I can start with one example to follow what Volodymyr said about how Russia is changing the law constantly. Like 2 examples. Like first, so when they changed the law and allowed to adopted Ukrainian children, that was not allowed before, they also started to promote this inside Russia. So you are a very good citizen if you take Ukrainian children. However, when they was first deported and take out children, there were a lot of sick children also. So at some moment, parents started to give back these children because they were not ready to responsibilities. They would just listen to propaganda. So Russia changed the law. So on 22nd October, they decided that from now on, children had to go through a health check. And only healthy enough children from that moment could be deported and relocated. So these are just examples that you can't say that you save children if you decide who to save, right? So again, it's just observing how they choose the law, or to continue what Mykola said about why they need children. They change another law, so now, if I don't mistake, Volodymyr can correct me, from 16 years old, they can go in army. It was just like 4 weeks, I think, ago, this change. So like 2+2, it's clear why they want their children, right? So they want to. And a lot of children were saying to us that they will try to guide them and say that you go on return and then you go to Ireland. We give you money, we give you apartments, we give you everything. So it's just about like law and this saving perception and like.
So actually, I really suggest and also talk to you that kidnapping kids is not just something separate from the Russian-Ukrainian war. It's one of the detail. And answering your question, why we're all doing together, because we are just in a war with Russia. And this is the thing, it's not possible not to stop the war, stop to this state, I mean, Russia, stop to kidnap kids. So it's all together. So it's complex, and Ukrainians are very quick to understand the whole story without any fragments that I do this and I'm not really, let's say, I don't know, there are some people in Ukraine, probably not, who say that we are not in a war with Russia. We do, but actually it's already 10 years.
And they started to do it from 2014. There were cases of deportation of children from 2014, and Ukraine was talking about it in United Nations. So it's again like, and how we said that there is no like no enough of legal opportunities to bring these children back. It's not the first war. The children were deported before. How it happened that the world still doesn't know how to return children, like, and we need to bring them one after another.
And actually, if to talk about 2014, my mom, she was under occupation from 2014 until 2019, until she died on the checkpoint when she was crossing this new border. And actually, she was saying like this, Alevtina, she was a teacher, my mom. She said, I'm so happy that I'm retired. What I would do if I would work in school. So she already understood the danger. And this one thing, and I remember in 2014, this first year when they changed the uniform for the kids in my hometown. So the uniform became like in Soviet Union. And of course, they changed the books. Tanya already mentioned this. And it was not the history, for instance, of Donbass. It was history of the region where you live, Родной край, or something like this. And so it already were features, and it's like more and more and more and more. And to be honest, now it's sometimes easy for Ukrainians to talk about, but before 2022, I was traveling in Europe, and when many people were talking to me that we have a civil war in Ukraine, and even a professor talked to me in Gent. So I don't want to say that it's progression, but anyway, I try to explain everyone what we are going through. And only one thing I like to add. One girl from the drawing session we had, she's going to be an international lawyer.
I will press the question of the bigger lesson here. Does what you learn from this experience go beyond Ukraine, have a larger meaning for us in the West, in Europe, in the United States?
I may want to. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I just want to answer for your previous question and end with second one, with last one. So talking about what we are supposed to do, we as not only Ukrainian, but people from academia, people from NGOs and other people, my answer is very short. very, very short. It's not to stay silent. You know, very often abroad, people are shying to talk about the war in Ukraine. People are very shy to talk about children. People are really shy to talk about rapes and sexual-based crimes. People are really shy to talk about tortures for Ukrainian soldiers captured by Russian authorities. And I think this is really a huge threat because Russian propaganda, they are not staying silent. Their caviar policy to bribe Western politicians, Western oriented media, and all other actors, they are not staying silent. They are extremely effective and efficient. We can see that right now they are using even artificial intelligence tools to create accounts in social media. Ukrainian state security authorities every day apply to, for example, some social media. I think I'm not allowed to name the names, but anyway, to keys and to delete these fake accounts, you know, which are disseminating all that propaganda things. And for the last question, what are the challenges? As I mentioned, they are fighting not against Ukraine, purely Ukraine. They're fighting against collective West, which means right now we Ukrainians represent values of collective West. We are trying to deal with that, and we should have this more wide perspective. The key and I think fundamental thing, which is extremely important for Russian leadership right now, it's a fear. They are trying to scare not only Ukrainians, not only children. They are using, for example, sexual-based crimes to create this environment of fear for Ukrainians to be scared of Russians who will come and rape them or doing something like that. But at the same time, they are trying to use this fear to punish and to threat their own population, their own authorities, and even members of top-level Russian authorities. So we should understand the nature of this aggression and, of course, unite to stay against, because Ukraine is just first in line, but not the last one, and we should be strong together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we should open the floor for the audience to ask questions.
How is the evidence that was collected by the artists in such a detailed, amazing way? It's the way forensic psychologists would do in this country. Quite unbiased, child-led, not interpreted, not corrected, with their own words and their own language. How is that kind of evidence can be useful to your larger investigation beyond just supplying the numbers of children taken into Russia and what's been done with them? In terms of how can that evidence be used to go to courts to prosecute the specific oppression and abuse of these children, the way it would in this country, for example, when we go to court and collect the same kind of data to prosecute what staff in the camps, in the schools, the bus drivers, whoever did all these abuses to children for them to be prosecuted.
Thank you for your question. And it's evident that it's terrible injustice. We understand this. And yesterday we had a meeting with Secretary Hillary Clinton, and she told us that it's evident that Putin is a war criminal who, I wrote for me, who steals Ukrainian children and turn them to Russian soldiers. It is a plan. And one day we woke up in Ukraine and recognized that all international institutions useless, and one criminal can come and do what he wants with your children. And to better explain you know, when we are talking that in Ukraine something happened, it's better to tell this story through your own children. Can you imagine that somebody who you know as an enemy, he hates you, came to your home, take your children, kidnapped your children, and train every day and force them do what he wants, telling them that your parents are very terrible. You must give them up. You have to be our child. We will help you. You should live in our house. It is not good to return to your house. You should receive our last name. We won't have you in our house. And every day you should follow our culture. You should follow our rules. And when I understand it could happen with my child, you know, and I am going to police, for example, and they telling you, oh, we have to investigate. Maybe in 1 year or 2 years, we need a longer time because something bad with regulation. We cannot punish that bad people. We understand they're bad, but we can do something. We cannot go in this house and take your children back. It happened now. It happened with somebody's children. It could happen with my children. If we will not prosecute, we are next. I am next. You are next. It could do somebody else. That's why we have no time just to wait, reflect, and to like have to discuss a new legislation, how to do this. It is genocide. We need immediate reaction from US, from UN, from all countries. If not, you will be the next. It's a rule.
Volodymyr, one word I want to say before you, that's, Marta, exactly the question that I gave to lawyers that work with the case of genocide. So before we went there, I went to Katerina Rashevska and said that how you can use it. Tell us what should we do so you can use it. And so we go like through training how to collect this evidence. And this can be used as indirect evidence. So and it goes by numbers, basically. So if you have 40 children that confirm isolation rooms, that helps you. So we cannot collect the first evidence, as Volodymyr mentioned, because it's a very like rules. It should be first time spoken in separate location, and sometimes what organizational children at that moment not ready to talk. But what we are doing that's important because it's about numbers. Like so many people talk about that they were not allowed to speak Ukrainian. So many people talk this. So all this then confirms the case of genocide that Mykola is speaking now. So this is the like we all need to work together in this. That's not only like we are not doing art project for art project.
Yes, please.
Wait, one moment. Let's get questions so that Volodymyr can also. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. I have two questions. The first question is related to the role of Qatar, who, like the country, has been working as a mediator. So my question is: have you been directly cooperating with the Qatari diplomats? And if I know the issue is sensitive, maybe you could give us some of the details how this cooperation, the mechanism, is working. And the second question is regarding the children who are in Russia. Some of them are, as you've mentioned, been taken to the eastern parts of the country. So what are the routes, how they are being taken back to Ukraine? What are the countries that they pass through? So thank you.
Thank you. I think nobody will answer you on the first question with Qatar, because Ukrainian government tried to have this negotiation through Qatar, and I have not any information, and it is not public information. Second question about
Roots.
The routes of returning, what countries?
Yeah, it's only one way from occupied territories in Russia through Belarus or through Baltic countries. Yeah, it's a long way. It's sometimes through Poland, but it's a long way to come back. Yeah, it's thousands of miles there and back.
Yeah, it's a bit dangerous to say the exact routes, because then you cannot use it
Right.
again.
I mean,
so yeah.
We have to understand
Yeah,
there's a level at which we cannot disclose,
It's-
especially what Save Ukraine is doing in detail.
No, I can tell you a lot, because what we build, it's underground railroad. How to take them back. That's why it's so confidential. It's so dangerous. That's why we will not inform you about how we're doing this.
Yes, the gentleman.
Wait, one moment, please.
I would imagine even in normal circumstances, it's difficult to identify the kids who are kidnapped and bring them back. But in the middle of a war, it's got to be more complicated. So I'm wondering how the ongoing war itself, whether we call it stalemate or continuing fighting on the front line, is complicating your efforts. I mean, I'm assuming that the kidnapping is still going on, or perhaps it stopped with the stalemate. But in any case, how have you felt the pressure of the war in impeding your activities?
I told in the beginning that, especially after Putin and Belova received warrant order, they understand that every child is a witness of war crimes. That's why they trying to block any return of any child. Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard, because only through these kids we can prove this war crime. And for us, first of all, very important to return these kids. And I'm telling very often that this war will continue until every child will not come back. We're fighting for these kids. This war on children. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, still going on. And because it happened on occupied territories, and it's very hard to find any information about these kids. They are disappearing. You know what happened? Maria Lvova Belova stated that we are not adopting Ukrainian children. And it's true, because they give them Russian citizenship first and adopting Russian children. It's technology. It's technology. It's very hard to explain Americans with a different culture what happened and why it happened here. We have to go too deep in our history. We have to show how we've been killed and imprisoned massively during 100 years last, and to better understand why it happened, why Putin doing this, what is his goal. Yeah, and it's very hard. in today's communication, it's impossible. You know how works media. It should be something delicious, what to show. It's something, it is not delicious. It is alive. It's a reality that he was stolen our kids, yeah, massively. And we're losing our kids there.
Yes, you had a question.
Wait, what about that?
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here tonight. Yeah, your discussion was really amazing. My name is Lachlan Hyatt. I'm a journalist student here at Columbia. I'm wondering if there are any gaps in coverage by the media or any specific issues on this topic that you wish Western journalists would look into more thoroughly.
I guess I can answer that question. Often Western journalists don't understand the context for several reasons. I mean, we are often asked why parents agreed, for instance, to send their child somewhere to the camp. What we learn from the parents and the kids, when you live under Russian authority, under occupation, it's like, you know, other planet, other rules, their own laws, even the life without laws anyway. So these parents just have no choice. And because, you know, many people are surprised why parents agreed. Just to understand that, people need to imagine not even the country, but some place where laws don't work. So that's why.
Yeah, I can add two things probably. That first is probably don't come with some stories that you already imagine. You know, like that if you imagine that they are stealing children like this, like kidnapping like that, and then you come there, you hear that it's manipulation and you're not satisfied and it doesn't sound, as Mykola said, so exciting and delicious, right? So just try to hear them out why they really did it. So if they agree to send this child for 2 weeks, and then this child was there 6 months, it's still unlawful taking them out. They still, or like, so just, I find it a lot. And also the second one is really important, is try to protect children as much as you can. We see sometimes that in social media you post photo, give name, give surname, and all information, and sometimes it's that information, like you should really protect dignity of these children. And because I'm not only but tomorrow. And it's not about some reality of some like something that you do just because your editor said you to do. You are doing it also because of your ethical concerns. There are some stories that I would never put in the film. Also, it will make it, you know, it on with some broadcasters. But even if child and their parents want it out now, maybe the child will not be happy if we only about sexual abuse, you know, in 5 years. So just listen to yourself, like start from this. And also what Mykola said, we all can do something. Like the most important things also, it's, I think, and it's to answer, Valentina, your question, like what, why and how it's important for other countries, that manipulation of information happening also here. Every day, like also with a large amount of people, you can see how it's happened. So probably we can learn something from these cases, so that it will not happen to children here. But that's a big word for that, for propaganda and indoctrination and manipulation with information. So I think it's also very useful for journalists to make that comparison, to make people understand here how this war is also their war. Because as both Volodymyr and Mykola mentioned, they're telling that we are fighting, that we have been manipulated, fight for US. So it's all interconnected. We are not somewhere there on other planet. So
Yeah,
what would help?
and we are not brothers and sisters with Russia, as you learned. We are not one state, as you learned before. We are sovereign country, independent. We are another nation. We are not Russians. It's the same if I tell you you are Russian. Are you Russian? You said, no, I'm American. The same for us. I'm not Russian, I'm Ukrainian. It's a different country. That's why everything they're doing, even if they take forcibly transfer a family with children, it's a crime. They taking them to another country forcibly. If in pretext of evacuation, of saving them, it's a forcible deportation. It's a forcible transfer.
Thank you. Yes.
We have someone in the very back here I want to make sure that we get to.
Hi, thank you so much for putting the event. My name is Katya Pavlevich from Razum for Ukraine, and I've been advocating for the return of abducted children for some time now. And what I encountered often is that people are generally supportive of the cause to return and save children. At the same time, those people call for Ukraine to settle their territories. They say that we should not provide Ukraine with weapons. We need to provide Ukraine with peace. Can you, from the perspective of returning and saving children, explain why Ukraine cannot settle for Crimea or Donbass to save children, and whether such settlement or whether refraining weapons or military assistance for Ukraine will help children to achieve peace? Thank you very much.
Volodymyr, are you up to answering this? Don't want to put you on the spot, but
I will be happy to do that. Thank you so much for transferring this question to me. So, you know, as I mentioned in my short presentation, the picture is much broader. It's not only about children. It's not only about war crimes. It's about centuries of fights between between Ukrainian people and people from Russian side. Third president of Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, in his lecture in Oxford a few months ago, presented that it's not first aggression from Russia to Ukraine, it's 25th one. So it's really hard to look for a peaceful solution. It's really hard to do something, because even reaching peaceful agreement in nearest future, I think, and our historical experience can prove that, we will have more transferring or sending people to east, to gulag camps or something, modern gulag camps or something like that. We will have more repressions against Ukrainians. We will have all other these atrocities and terrible scenes on occupied territories. So from my personal perspective, it's impossible right now to reach agreement without giving efficient and effective control for Ukrainian government to those territories which have been occupied by Russia since 2014. And if any kind of peace agreement will provide this opportunity to provide Ukrainian government to have efficient control, to protect citizens, to get back children, to provide them with all opportunities to stop this fear and threats for their both physical and mental perception of the reality, I think right now it's impossible. That is why it's not about stopping the war and atrocities. It's about a little bit wider perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Two more questions because we are over time already. Please.
So my name is Catherine Valenga, and I'm the granddaughter of 4 survivors of Stalin's genocide, Holodomor, collectivization, Nazi occupation, displacement that came to Canada for a better life. So we in Canada, as you know, have faced our own truth and reconciliation around Every Child Matters. And there's a very long history with the First Nations and Ukrainians. In fact, they traded, they supported each other because they were both so discriminated against. And my friends in the community have said to me, we don't understand. They took our children to drive the Indian out of them. Why are they taking your children, Ukrainian children, to drive the Ukrainian out of them? And I was shocked when I met Mykola, and thank you for inviting me to join you. 1.5 million children, 1.5 million children in 10 years. Did people know that? 1.5 million children. And this is happening now. And there's no response. So my question is really around something that I noticed in your speaking, Mykola. You don't call it a war, because war implies a conflict, like we have a problem, you know, Ukrainians and Russians, they're fighting, and then it escalates and someone throws something over the fence and now they're duking it out. You spoke about it. You said, this is a home, and it's like a home and land invasion, a home invasion to come in and take what is most dear. What matters the most to Ukraine is her children. And, you know, I just got back from Davos, where again, we were on panels. Ukraine is imagine a woman who is the richest woman in the world. Everyone knows from playing Risk. You win Ukraine, you control the world. Did you know 1/3 of the rich black soil that can feed the world is in Ukraine? 8 meters deep, the Nazis used to take it into Germany. When I found out, I couldn't believe it. There was a whole panel at Ukraine House Davos. $8 to $12 trillion of rare earth minerals in Ukraine. What does that mean? Who wants rare earth minerals? Well, we need them for space. We need them for green energy. We need them for these phones. And who controls the rare earth minerals on the planet? China. So this is a woman with very rich lands, with children, and the seat of democracy, the first democratic institutions, the first constitution, a place of freedom-loving people who have been fighting for 700 years for their freedom since, you know, 988, since the 1200s, right? When the Mongol hordes came in. So this is not a new fight, but this is the biggest heist in the history of the world, and it's happening in front of us, and we call it a war. It's not a war, people. It's a heist. It's a robbery, plain and simple.
Yeah, thank you.
Because a war implies it's hard to stop a war. It's easy to stop a rape. It's easy to stop a heist. No, but I mean, I'm someone that's your journalist, and it's about truth for you. For me, it's about goodness. But what I'm saying to you is it's like we're getting caught up in how do you stop a war and a counteroffensive, and all I hear is a bunch of people talking about stuff they don't know about and trying to predict the future. So I'd love to hear what you say, and thank you so much, Columbia Journalism School, for organizing this and giving voice to Ukrainians and letting hear from them. So
let me clarify that. Our main resource is children for any country. And you told about 1.5 million, it's true. Up for the last 10 years, 1.5 million children are hostages on occupied territories in Russia. How many of them unaccompanied? We have this number 20,000 kidnapped because Ukraine identified only 20,000. But how many of them we couldn't identify? We don't know. We don't know. They disappeared there. But it's true that 1.5 million children for the last 10 years were growing. It's of the first invasion and second invasion, Donbass, Crimea, new occupied territories. They are hostages. They've been captured. They've been brainwashed. Maybe all of them have now Russian passports in Russia or on occupied territories. It's very hard to stay Ukrainian. Yeah, they must receive passport. It's about existence. Yeah, because they could be imprisoned, their children could be taken, and it's a genocide.
I think that we should call it the night, give our guests a little bit of a break, and we will continue over reception so you can ask them your questions in person in a more civilized way over food and drink. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much.
The Harriman Institute.
Oh, and thank you, Harriman Institute, for organizing it. Thank you so much for doing it.
I'll give you my business.
And Valentina, thank you for moderating. Thank you.
As it was said that it's the journalism school, they just gave us the room.
Yes.